Welcome, and thank you for joining me for the second video in a color correction series. Today I'm going to be going over the Lumetri color correction system. So this is built into Premiere, and you can find that in the color correction area. The best part of it being built into Premiere is the fact that it's not like a third-party system or something that you buy extra that you have to spend more money on outside of that. Sometimes the problems with those of adding in there, it can kind of bog down your export process, or it can cause crash problems within Premiere itself. This is built in, and my experience of it, it adds a slight bit of extra time for the render process, but nothing that really makes a difference. So I've really enjoyed using it. It's really got a lot of powerful tools in it. The first tool I'm going to talk about today is just the basic correction. We'll go over what each of those tools do, and just do a little bit of color correction on a video that I have here. So let's dive in and see what we got. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my adjustment layer, place it over the video that I'm going to do the correction with. I'm going to come to Effects. It's under Video Effects, Color Correction, Lumetri Color. I'm going to take this effect, drag it onto my adjustment layer, come to my effect controls, and you'll see it right underneath here on the bottom. All right, and I'm going to talk about these in later videos. Today I'm just going to talk about basic correction. First thing I'm just going to do from the top down. First thing you're going to see is the active button. This right here is really nice because it just does the basic correction. So if you have other effects under here, it doesn't do anything with that. But it basically turns it on and off. So that while you're doing your editing, I recommend that you turn it on and off to look at what you started with to what you have now. Because sometimes I tend to overcorrect. And if I look back at the original footage, it kind of resets the color correction in my eyes, so it helps me kind of go back and check myself. So I'll kind of activate, deactivate back and forth to make sure what I'm doing is an actual improvement from the video itself. So the first thing is the white balance. It has a wonderful selector tool right here. If you have something white in the video, which we do, we have this white border on the picture behind the subject here. So if you have something in the background that's white, you can take this little white marker. Now this always does not do a great job. Sometimes it is just a place to start from. So you select something white, and ta-da! Look at that. That it went ahead and changed just the temperature and the tint for me. That gave a very nice white balance here. So the first thing that I'm going to, so I'm going to undo that to reset it. So I'm going to show you how to actually make these changes yourself. So I always drop these down and use these sliders. These sliders are wonderful. As you pull it to the left, you actually see the changes in the parade. It pulls the red down and it pushes the blue up. Now this white right here, looking at this scope, I can tell it's this bright line going across the video here. I can see that also in the colors here. So in order to make this white, I need all three of these colors to line up in this same area. So I'm going to pull the temperature down, and as you can see, it only goes to -100. But if you select and type in a number, it will actually go past that. So put about 115, that kind of brings it within that range there. So here I see that it's got kind of a greenish tint to it. You see that the green in the mids and stuff like that are pushed up. So the tint actually adds green this in the left. Going right, it takes away green and adds some purple or magenta to it. So I'm going to put it right about there. And you can see just in those few seconds, this has a very nice white balance to it. It's not perfect across, but some of those are going to be, I've color corrected this particular video so many times that I know that when we make changes down here, it's going to adjust this a little bit. But this is a very quick way that you can go through and get a very nice color correction. So the next thing that I'm going to look at here underneath is tone, and this right here actually affects the exposure of the actual video itself. Of course, the overall exposure gives you a boost to everything, pushes up, brightens, or brings it down. This is kind of like an overall boost here. So I'm going to bring this down because the actual basic exposure is not bad. I'm just going to do some fine tuning with it. Contrast. What contrast does is I'm going to push it to overextend to see kind of in the 40, in the mid area where a lot of the stuff is sitting. It's going to stretch out the top range and push down the bottom range. So what it actually does is contrast kind of takes the middle area and kind of pulls it out when you go to the right. When you go to the left, it pushes everything in together. So if you want a really high contrast, can really give you kind of the image of something that is really sharp. But if contrast is too much, you get a kind of a picture like this where the blacks are too high, the whites, the highlights are too high, and it's just not a good looking picture. Now on the opposite end, if you pull left, you'll see in the Lumascope how it actually starts pulling everything in, and it gives kind of a very faded look on the video. So the contrast is not bad in this picture. I might change a little bit after I do these 4 down here. So the highlights is not the max range, but it takes the higher end of the picture that you have, and you can either push that higher end up or you can pull it down. And in this one, it's not bad, but I'm probably going to pull it. You know what? I'm going to leave the highlights alone because the highlights are not bad. There's just 1 or 2 areas that are way up here too much. And I'm going to adjust that with the white. The whites actually takes anything at 100%, takes the very highest end and pushes it down. So I'm going to pull those whites down there. It does affect kind of the rest of the video, so I'm going to have to make some counter adjustments to that, but it pulls my higher end into the more of the range that it needs to be in. So now that it kind of crushed the lower end down here at the bottom, I'm going to take my shadows, and it does the same thing as highlights, but it does it at the lower end of the video. And I'm going to take my shadows and I'm going to push those up. You can see that didn't change the bottom range, just like the highlights didn't affect the top range. But what it did do is kind of in this middle area, lower middle area, it pushed those up and it kind of really brightened up the picture. Of course, the blacks do the same thing as the whites, but it affects it on the lower end. On this video, it's not bad, so I'm going to leave it where it is. For that. So anytime you make some corrections, especially in the shadows, it kind of dulls out the colors on it. So at the very end, at the bottom, you have saturation. Don't worry about dulling out the colors that much when you're boosting the shadows. Just mainly get the exposure where it needs to be. You can come back afterwards with the saturation and boost up that saturation to bring the color back into the picture. And you can see that really just makes that picture pop now. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to deactivate. That's what we started with. And activate. And as you've worked with these just for a few minutes, you kind of get the understanding of what they're doing. And you could easily change this video right here from this to this within a minute or so without much of a problem. So that's basically the color correction, the basic color correction in the Lumetri color. So it's got some very powerful tools in there that can really help your video quality. The next video, I'm going to go over actual video exposures. I have a list of different items of where they need to hit within the Luma scale, of up from 0% all the way up to 100%, different type of items, skin colors, stuff like that. Where should they be found in the Luma scale to make sure we have correct exposure? So comment below if you have any questions, and I'll try to address them in the next video. Thank you.